to the Band Bibliophile. My name's Bailey, and you've come across a dusty corner of the internet where allergies run high and the vibes are special. Today, I'm going to tell you my favorite books from each month of 2023. For January, I didn't really come across an uber impressive read, but one was highly successful at crafting a strong atmosphere, and that's Five Total Strangers, a suspenseful YA tale that follows Mira, a girl desperately trying to get home for Christmas. When a record-breaking blizzard cancels her flight, she hitches a ride with 4 seemingly friendly college students, but the weather conditions are hazardous, and as the snow and ice become deadlier by the minute, her fellow passengers begin to look treacherous too. Unbeknownst to Mira, one of them has been stalking her and is ready to make their move. This book was literally made to give me anxiety. It tapped into 2 of my greatest fears: talking to strangers, or really any other human being, you know, and driving in bad road conditions. Passenger princess here. My favorite part though was the undeniably strong impression of environment or season. I'm a winter and fall girly, and this book did winter so well. I felt like I could hear the crunch of snow under the tires, feel the cold that seeps into my legs when I enter a car in the dead of winter before it's been warmed up, and see the moon reflecting on compact, bright white snow towering on either side of the road. I could see my breath, feel the tip of my nose freeze, and craved the warmth of being inside a toasty coat. In other words, I was living my best life. For seasoned thriller or suspense readers, I think it's likely that this will come across as unimpressive, but for someone like me who hasn't read that many, I found it to be really fun, though I did have to suspend my disbelief now and then. Yet, despite there being too many coincidences, they effectively added to an already taut situation, making me more and more stressed. The majority of the story was one argument after another as the crowded crew began to turn on one another. The feeling of being cornered continued to mount, and everyone tried to pry each other's secrets or hidden agendas from their chattering teeth. I'm definitely going to be pursuing more thrillers in the future. Yes, I did change angles. P.S. I Spook You from February is one of my top reads of the year. Reluctantly psychic Rain is a disgraced FBI agent that embarrassed the agency once he admitted to seeing ghosts. For redemption, Rain's sent to Brickell Bay, where he's expected to lay low and work on a cold case. The local law enforcement he has to interact with is Daniel, who just so happens to be Rain's ex. With an impossible case to solve and the feeling that he's falling back in love with Daniel, Rain is forced to confront the past in more ways than one. I buddy read this with Christian because it's one of her favorites, and let me say that she has impeccable taste. The author perfectly blends the romance and mystery elements, making me eager to see the progression of both. In terms of the relationship, it has great banter, and this is one of the few books where the use of the love interest calling each other baby didn't make me cringe. I'm going to take that as a monumental win. Usually I'm like, it's true. For me, the most interesting elements to the story were the relationship dynamics. Rain is a guy who's very much the straight and narrow type, while his family is drastically different. Think hippies and alternative lifestyles. Rain purposely distanced himself from his parents and sisters, so seeing them reconnect and interact with each other drew my attention. When it comes to Daniel, the love interest, he was the man Rain left. How that affects their current relationship, whether that's through a work, friendship, or whatever have you lens, it was something I couldn't look away from. There's this undeniable pull to each other because of their rich history, but there's also a reluctance to forget the hurt Rain caused. I'm a sucker for messy pasts and the need to do some work before happily ever after, which I'm sure I'll get more of in the sequels. My favorite read of March was Klaus Volume 1. Set in a dark, fantastic past of myth and magic, Klaus tells the story of how Santa Claus really came to be. A tale of one man and his wolf against a totalitarian state and the ancient evil that sustains it. This book draws on Viking lore and Siberian shamanism, taking in the creepier side of Christmas. Why I was reading a Christmas book in March, you might ask. Well, I never got to pick up a Christmas book in December 2022. Who says holiday reading needs to be contained to the actual season? Pish posh, I say. Pish posh. The art and coloration in this are spectacular. Half the time I was turning pages because I wanted more pretty pictures. Outside of my visual fixation though, there's something to be said about a dark Santa origin story. It's so unlike contemporary society's narrative of the legendary figure, and I loved that. Plus, Santa is a looker. I'd like to take a moment of silence and appreciation for his rugged unlawful good looks. Ho ho ho, everybody. If this was how Santa looked today, I'm sure it'd not just be the children who'd want to sit on his lap. I'm just saying. For April, I'd like to introduce to you How Not to Marry a Prince. Amador is 30, aka spoiled goods. Past his due date. Needs to go. Despite the prince's best efforts to find a suitor, no one has put a ring on it. And if he can't find someone soon, he'll forcibly be married to his enemy. Quite the predicament, I know. Prince Nazaire is the only one left to court, but he's notorious for turning away suitors. Amador is resigned to his loveless fate, but is pleased to find the prince's castle brimming with opportunities for mischief, particularly in the form of romantic meddling. Just because Amador won't ever be happy in his marriage doesn't mean there isn't a chance to ensure others will be happy in theirs. This was silly, cozy, and heartwarming all at the same time. The vast majority of the fun came from seeing the shenanigans Amador got himself into to make other people's dreams come true. He could seriously have had his own reality TV show. There's royal scandal, gentle romance, and sweet gestures made that have my heart melting. The author really charmed me, and I think part of How Not to Marry a Prince's allure was the sheer ridiculousness of certain situations. It's comedy gold! Does anybody even remember Gallivant? Amador thinks everybody around him is entirely clueless, but then he's clueless when it comes to areas in his own life. For the readers, it's clear as day, but the main character clearly needs it spelled out for him. What a precious soul. Ninth House stole the show for me in May, and it's definitely one of my top reads of 2023. Alex can see ghosts, which provides her the unique opportunity to attend Yale with a full scholarship if she agrees to monitor the university's secret societies. Tomorrow's rich and powerful are born from these societies, or ask them to perform rituals in their favor. But their occult activities are revealed to be more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. I rarely read adult fiction, and I thought I could just dip my toes in there, but instead I felt like I was thrown into the ocean. Don't mind me drowning. Nothing to see here. Ninth House's world was so complex. I felt so grown up reading it that it's ridiculous. It was only afterwards that I realized how starved I was for a story like it, something to challenge me. The writing was delicious, and my feelings for the characters were ever evolving based on the latest reveals. Everything about this book is rich, hooking me instantly. I didn't stand a chance. Well, it could get a little slow and there were lots of big words I didn't know. Maybe I should get one of those word of the day things. I was glued. The darkness to the setting and the characters were bottomless, but there was significant gray area too, especially in Alex. She's thorny, but you want to sneak past her defenses and root for her. I really don't know what to say other than please read this book. June was the perfect time to read the first book in the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. Early in the year, I watched the first season to Amazon Prime and wanted to see what the original source material was like. Belly measures her life in summers. It's when she spends time at Susanna's beach house with Jeremiah and Conrad. They're the boys Belly has known since she was a baby. They've been her brothers, crushes, and everything in between, but one summer, everything changes. This book is perfectly addicting in the way teen drama and angst should be. Han beautifully and honestly captures the ups and downs of life, and she does it in such a specific way through time-capsuling screenshots from a single season. She made me remember how I felt about summer before I became an adult. June through August were full of infinite possibilities, but also an indescribable sadness born of knowing summers and their enchanting potentials would inevitably end. Change is unavoidable, and no matter how much that gives me anxiety, the truth is indisputable. The Summer I Turned Pretty made me remember the summers I'd spend hours swimming, running through the woods, and basking in the sun before escaping into the house for the relief of air conditioning. It brought on a nostalgia I can't really explain, but I deeply connected with this. When I see criticism for the book, it's often directed at Belly and her lack of maturity, which can translate as brattiness. I myself have given similar criticism to other YA characters in the past, and I can attest that Belly has her insensitive moments. But something about the way Han wrote her feels authentic. Young people tend to have a very individualistic view of the world. Everything is centered around themselves, their experiences, and their very real, very big emotions. And I think that can somewhat explain Belly's behavior. It's with age that perspective and nuance come. We gradually begin to see the world as something we exist in instead of something we dominate. People aren't just characters in our own movies, but very real individuals with their own narratives happening simultaneously alongside ours. Belly just hasn't gained that greater perspective yet. Katzenjammer, my July pick, is easily one of the most distressing and disturbing YA books I've ever read. Kat's trapped in an alternate version of her school. Its hallways expand and contract as it breathes, and the bathroom showers run red with blood. Her best friend is turning into cardboard, and instead of a face, Kat has a cat mask made of her own hardened flesh. She doesn't remember why she's trapped in the school with her classmates, but she has to find a way out before the students destroy each other. Advertised as American Horror Story meets The Metamorphosis, this tale is about family, love, tragedy, and masks. Ones others make for us and the ones we make for ourselves. When I finished this book, I encountered the biggest question mark of my life. People could probably see it floating above my head like a blimp. For starters, I don't think I'm smart enough to unravel all the symbolism and hidden meaning behind the details in Katzenjammer. But what I did take away from this reading experience was a lot of negative emotion. Sadness, frustration, desperation, exasperation, all the rations, really. This book went places I haven't seen other YA books go before. My jaw had to be picked up off the floor at the end. So, all the trigger warnings, I just want to get that out of the way. The author unflinchingly examines human cruelty. There are depictions of violence and senseless evil, and why such events transpire is what we are left asking ourselves. What I took away from the story is that so many times we are asked how people can be so merciless, and the response is unanswerable. There is no satisfying justification, and it seems all we can do is live in the aftermath. If you want to be enraged and depressed by a surreal story, read Katzenjammer. It's experimental, twisted, and bleak, not to mention divisive. On the one hand, I think it's a masterpiece, but on the other, it makes you want to curl up into a ball of existential dread. Take that as you will. For August, I have Healer and Witch. Sylvie and her mother and grandmother are trusted healers in their medieval French village, though some whisper they're witches. After her grandmother dies, and an attempt to use magic to heal her mother's grief brings tragic consequences, Sylvie leaves her village in search of a teacher. The journey subjects her to strange alliances, powerful temptations, danger, and deceit. Healer and Witch reads like a Studio Ghibli film feels. It's whimsical and imaginative, with a strong sense of place, while simultaneously possessing an appeal to both the young and old. I'd argue it's ultimately a character study that focuses on finding oneself in a time when everyone else is trying to either define you or use you for personal gain. Sylvie desires the tools to thrive, but she finds roadblock after roadblock. Either people judge her prematurely, misunderstand her intentions, or want to manipulate her abilities. The power dynamics are tipped far out of her favor, as she's just a young woman in a world dominated by men and those with deep pockets. Where does your power come from? What does it look like? Does she want it? And can she derive it from within herself? Healer and Witch has a quiet addictiveness which might come from the way it holds its secrets close. Characters are slow to reveal their whole selves, so you're biding to learn more about them. And their relationships are beautifully complicated. Someone who's deceitful and villainous to one person is another's savior, and while true natures are revealed, some are dripping in grayness. Then there's the ending. It has so much potential, and I'm sure there aren't plans to make a sequel, but I would love that. I'm also not ashamed to know that I didn't know a handful. Okay. Maybe 2 handfuls of words in this book. I'm not going to blame myself for that though. I think it's more appropriate to blame the American school system. Thank you. Moving on to September, we have A Door in the Dark. It's a YA fantasy about Ren, who spent 4 years proving she's one of the best wizards in her generation, yet she's struggling to get recruited by one of the 4 major houses. Enter Theo Rude, the wealthy, powerful son of one of the most ruthless aforementioned houses. When 2 privileged and 4 scholarship students are forced to take the same magical portal home for the holidays, disaster ensues. A fight breaks out, the portal spell malfunctions, and all 6 are magically planted into a dangerous wilderness. With their magical reserves waning, Ren must get everyone home safe while proving to Theo that she's a good investment. This book has a little bit of everything that I love in such small doses. There's a magic school, a deadly wilderness full of fantastical creatures, and sketchy characters with loads to hide. Then there's the romance. On the one hand, it's forbidden because of the girl's motives, and then there's the added bonus where arguably the guy falls first. He's a massive jerk turned love interest, but he has so much potential and wants to be better. Sorry, I'm not drooling over him or the story or anything. Look away. The plot thickens because the girl's just using the guy but can't help but develop feelings for him because of spoilers I won't get into. Suffice to say, this was a my-layered cup of drama. Ren is ruthless and calculating, a perspective I don't often read from, and I can't wait to see how she grows and changes throughout the series as she tries to juggle seeking vengeance while protecting her heart. I'm fully invested in whatever downfall she's plotting in her devious mind. Just don't get attached to any of the characters, okay? You've been warned. For October, I chose Extra Normal. Charlie's adopted siblings make her look painfully boring next to them. Mateo's a werewolf, Gideon's telekinetic, and her sister's a ghost. Even her parents work for the Division of Extranormal Investigations. When Charlie's parents take a vacation, the Weavers arrive in town and become the new neighbors. They describe themselves as a nice, normal couple, but Charlie believes they're hiding something. It's up to her to uncover what's going on without tipping her parents off that something's wrong. The cast of characters in this book is phenomenal, especially the siblings. I loved their individual personalities and the way their childhoods before becoming part of Charlie's family influenced their behavior and interactions with one another. My favorite character, though, may have been Miss Sinister, a possessed doll who moves around by dragging herself by her arms across the floor. She likes crunching on bugs and getting into mischief. I don't know what's better than that, like truly. Charlie is such a standout character as well, and I think her need to be useful to her family to compensate for her lack of abilities or supernatural powers was very human, and it tugged at my heart. She's so thoughtful and must be protected. I honestly closed this book feeling a bit like I read a children's version of Dr. Sleep. I hope this becomes a series because I would read every installment. This is peak middle grade experience for adults, okay? And let me just say that if you meet people who repeatedly expound how normal they are, well, normal people don't plaster a smile on their faces at all times. Normal people don't need to tell everyone they're normal either. That's just sketchy. Run for the hills! My pick for November is Flesh and Bone Book 1 Awakening. Max is a restless grad student whose unusual powers mark him out from his peers. He finds himself falling for Sam, rising attacker for the university's lacrosse team, and together they go down a path of self-discovery in a world ruled by the gods and fate. This novel explores grief, self-acceptance, and love. Brooke crafted such vulnerable identities that I couldn't help but feel fiercely connected to them. Their emotions were authentic, honest, and faithful to not only their circumstances, but also their well-designed personalities, backstories, and psyches. In terms of the book's examination of grief, the reader sees how intensely linked it is to other facets of life, like mental health, which bleeds into our perception of self-worth and the way we navigate interpersonal relationships. And don't get me started on the romance. There's an explosive spark instantly ignited between Max and Sam, but what exactly is this earth-shattering pull they feel towards one another? I'm almost hesitant to make this comparison, but I'm gonna do it anyway. A grown-up Percy Jackson meets All for the Game. This book is wholly its own, but combines two great concepts: gods and the cross. Need I say more? Last but not least, we have Mistletoe Mishigas. Sheldon's transferred to a new school and enlists the help of the custodian Theo to set up his classroom. The two have a bit of a rocky start, but discover they could be the fake date each of them needs this holiday season. Sheldon needs someone to show off at his ex-boyfriend's Christmas Eve wedding, and Theo's trying to deter his parents' persistent matchmaking by having a partner for Hanukkah. There are heavier topics in this book, but for the most part, I'd say it's a fairly low-stress fake dating situation, which is my preference. It's also advertised as opposites attract, Beauty and the Bear situation, and I can confirm. What I love so much about this story is the acceptance cultivated between the love interests. They're conscious of each other's insecurities and consequently do their best to ensure the other understands that they accept and want to celebrate, or at the very least acknowledge those parts of themselves. It's beautiful to be on the receiving end of someone going out of their way to do something specific to you as a person. It shows your partner's listening and supportive, and this couple does it again and again. There's so much more going on outside of this grumpy sunshine romance though. There's strong themes of self-love and found family. It's about overcoming your fears, doubts, and haters. I'm going to be reading more Teachers in Love books in 2024. Thank you so much for watching. What were some of your favorite reads of 2023? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.